the age-old question, is budget backpacking gear right for you? Welcome guys, my name is Matt. If you guys are new to the channel, welcome to Matty Outdoors. We talk all sorts of backpacking and hiking related things here. We talk a lot about budget gear. We talk a lot about ways to make yourself more comfortable out on trail. And with budget gear in mind, you know, we look at ways to do things kind of on the cheap. I'm a little frugal at times. I don't necessarily like spending money when I don't have to. And I kind of like bringing those ideas to you guys. So if that is something that you're into, maybe consider clicking on the subscribe button over there. Now there's kind of two primary groups, I guess, of people that are going to be looking at getting budget backpacking gear. You've got the people who are new to backpacking and just starting out, and then you've kind of got the experienced backpackers. Now, for those who are new to backpacking and you're just starting out, you know, a lot of times you look at backpacking gear and you look at, you know, just all the things that people are going to carry and the prices of a lot of these things that people are going to carry on their backs on a backpacking trip. And it can be pretty intimidating and it can look like a very, very, very heavy investment. And that honestly can be 100% true. You know, you start looking at some of these backpacking gear lists that, you know, people will post, and they've got all these really expensive Dyneema shelters, you know, these 950 fill power quilts and these Thermarest Neo-Air sleeping pads, and, you know, or these ultralight hammocks and these, you know, 950 fill power underquilts and Dyneema tarps, you know, just, you start looking at that kind of gear and the dollar signs just flash and the prices go up and up, and it can be pretty intimidating for a new backpacker getting into backpacking. For a new backpacker, budget gear is an awesome thing. You know, there are tons of different resources out there. I think where we are right now, kind of in the, I don't know, the backpacking niche and the backpacking realm, I don't think it's ever really been better in terms of quality, inexpensive backpacking gear coming out onto the market. I mean, even, you know, 5-6 years ago, there was nowhere near as much affordable budget gear that's good quality as there is now. Looking at tents from companies like Nature Hike and 3FUL, you know, even like a company like One Tigress. You know, these companies are producing some pretty high quality pieces of gear at a much lower price point than a lot of companies out there, you know, like Big Agnes and MSR, or, you know, if you guys are ridiculously rich, a company like Hilleberg that makes some pretty bomb-proof tents. For a newer backpacker, budget backpacking gear is going to be one of your absolute best friends. I mean, if you're coming from the world of day hiking and you're looking at getting into multi-day treks, you've obviously already got some hiking gear on you, but, you know, like getting stuff, like I mentioned, you know, like a shelter system, a sleeping bag or a quilt, you know, a sleeping pad, or if you want to get into hammocking, you know, you got to get yourself a hammock. You got to figure out if you want to go under quilt, or if you want to use a pad, what kind of tarp you want to use, you know, if you want to use your sleeping bag inside, or if you want to use a top quilt. And finding ways to get some of this gear and not spending an arm and a leg can be huge. You know, for myself personally, when it comes to my budget gear, I do a lot of my budget gear shopping on Amazon. Now I know I'm probably going to upset some people by saying that, because yes, a lot of gear that you'll pick up on Amazon is Chinese made, and everybody says, you know, you got to buy made in the USA or buy Canadian made gear. But for me as a consumer, I look to get the best bang for my buck. And, you know, if the best bang for my buck in terms of, say, buying a backpacking stove is going on Amazon and picking up the ultra cheap, ultra lightweight BRS 3000 micro burner stove, then that's the road I'm going to go. I mean, there's a reason why so many ultralight backpackers make this their stove of choice. In terms of what you get for what you spend, hands down, the BRS 3000 is probably the absolute best bang for your buck piece of budget backpacking gear that you're ever going to find. This thing performs just as well as, you know, micro burners costing upwards of $100, and, you know, this thing costs about 20 to 25 bucks on Amazon. Sometimes you can get it on, you know, the Amazon deal of the day discounts. It's even cheaper than that, but yeah, for 20, 25 bucks, you know, you really can't go wrong with a little stove like this. Now, the BRS is just one of numerous pieces of quality budget backpacking gear that there is out there. And if you guys are looking for more budget backpacking gear options, I will put links to a couple videos at the end of this video. So stick around for those, you'll catch those at the end. But like I mentioned before, you know, you've got the newer backpackers who are gonna look at getting budget gear, just kind of save themselves some money and, you know, see if backpacking is right for them. You know, you kind of start start with budget gear and then you upgrade a little bit as time goes on and get yourself, you know, those pricier pieces of gear, because that's what we do as backpackers. We become addicted to gear and we just like eventually buying the expensive stuff little by little. But if you are an experienced backpacker, you know, say you're somebody who's got a more traditional backpacking gear loadout, you know, you got the bigger like 65 to 70 liter backpack, and you're used to carrying your 40 pounds for a single overnight trip, but you've kind of had this thought in the back of your head of, hey, maybe let's look at going into a more lightweight or ultralight backpacking gear loadout. Much like the newer backpackers just getting into backpacking and going with budget gear options to kind of, you know, like lessen the blow of all this expensive stuff that they're about to go and buy. For experienced backpackers transitioning to, say, a more ultralight or lightweight backpacking gear loadout, looking at some budget options can be a fantastic way to help yourself make that transition without absolutely breaking the bank. And the real beauty about a lot of this budget backpacking gear is, like I mentioned at the start, a lot of this gear is very high quality, and this is not necessarily gear that you actually have to go and upgrade. You know, I mean, if you look at a backpacker like myself, I've been backpacking for over 20 years now. And yes, over the years, I have accumulated some very, very pricey pieces of backpacking gear. I have spent far more money on hiking and backpacking gear over the years than I even wish to think of. But my current backpacking gear loadout utilizes a plethora. Yes, I use the word plethora. Yeah, I use a bunch of budget backpacking gear in my ultralight backpacking gear loadout, in my winter backpacking gear loadout. I use budget backpacking gear for my dog, and I've been very fortunate to find some quality pieces of budget backpacking gear that I've been able to incorporate into my full-time backpacking gear loadout. And I honestly can't really think of any higher priced alternatives that I would even want to look at to replacing some of these pieces of budget ultralight backpacking gear or just budget backpacking gear. And if you're interested in seeing what some of these pieces of budget backpacking gear that I use in my everyday backpacking gear loadout for, you know, multi-day trips or single night trips, week-long trips, winter backpacking trips, you name it, I use these pieces of gear on almost every single backpacking trip. Like I mentioned at the start, I will put a link to a couple of these videos. You'll find them here and here. So when you're done with this video right now, check out one of those. Might give you guys some gear options if you're looking at getting some budget backpacking gear. And as always, I'm Matty. Thank you so dang much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.